Hello everyone, it's great to see you again. You're watching the new episode of the podcast Hospitality as It Is. This podcast is brought to you by Xenios Academy, the world's first fully gamified training app for hospitality professionals. My name is Igor Besermenji and I'm a global marketing director at our startup. Joining me today again, Marco Corallo, Chief Operating Officer at Xenios Academy. Marco, great to see you again.
Thank you very much, Igor. Thank you for organizing this as usual. And it's great to be back with a new episode of Hospitality as It Is.
Yeah.
I'm very excited for the episode of today.
Yeah, I am, because our today's guest is actually Carrie Gape. She's one of the first guests that we had on board since we started planning our podcast. And Carrie, thank you for keeping up with me all this time, like for the past few weeks.
It's been a while.
Never giving up, never canceling, never postponing. Thank you for that.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Carrie Gape is an experienced restaurant manager here in Dubai, but also former flight attendant. So Carrie, can you please tell us more about yourself?
Hi guys, my name is Carrie. I'm 31 years old. I'm from Wales in the UK, and I've been living in Dubai for 7 years now. Originally, I came over to work with Emirates, so I got a job with Emirates. So I started as cabin crew, and then unfortunately during the pandemic, lost my job, and then moved into the hospitality sector. Mm-hmm. And I've been doing this for the last 3 years now.
Great. We actually have a few things in common now that I think about it. Like, we've both lived in the Middle East, worked as cabin crew, both lived in England.
Yeah.
What else do we have in common?
Let's find out.
I'm sure we're going to discover in the next half an hour.
Out.
For sure.
Yeah. So can you tell us how was it, like this transition from being a flight attendant, living like in the air, somewhere between the air and hotels, and how was that for you?
I mean, it was a very difficult transition, I won't lie. Although I do think people tend to forget that being a flight attendant is you're not just there as a safety precaution for the passengers. You're there to provide a service, and especially coming from like an airline like Emirates, where they really pride themselves on service. So it's technically kind of hospitality in the sky. Yeah. So it shouldn't have been such a difficult transition, but I really did struggle with it to begin with. I started off as a head waitress, and then I worked my way up to assistant restaurant manager, where I am now. So I've been very fortunate that I was able to grow. Because it was really difficult. I felt like I was starting at the bottom again and having to work my way up. But within the 3 years, I've come a long way. And it's something that I'm really proud of myself for doing, for sticking it out. There was many times where I thought I couldn't do this, like finishing work at 3 o'clock in the morning. But then, you compare it to being a flight attendant, you're waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning. So it shouldn't have been that difficult. But now I really enjoy what I do. Mm-hmm. I pretty much get to talk to people all day long, which I love to do. So it really suits my personality in that sense. And like my team and stuff, like they're people that I really care about. And the fact that I'm in a position where I'm able to help them, not only in work, but in their personal lives too. It's something that I'm really happy to do that. Mm-hmm. So it's been a difficult one, but now I'm very happy in where I'm at.
Amazing. And if I can follow up on the question as well, I love what you said about, working as a cabin crew is hospitality in the sky.
Basically, yeah.
And it is, right? So what are the main similarities between, restaurants and food and beverage on the ground, let's say, and hospitality in the sky? And what are the differences and similarities?
Sure. So I guess the most similar aspect is that your guest satisfaction or passenger satisfaction is always going to be number one priority. So that's exactly the same in the sky and on the ground. Yeah. The major differences, I think, as a flight attendant, you're serving chicken or beef. It's not very complex. Whereas on the ground, when you're working in a fine dining, casual dining restaurant, it's very more in depth. So you have a lot more learning to do on your side about the different aspects of dishes, different aspects of cocktails. Mm-hmm. Whereas in the sky, it's very simple. You want a vodka Coke? Sure, no problem. You want beef? Fine. You don't really need to go more into depth with that. So it's more personalized, I'd like to say, on ground. You get to learn about your guests and figure out what their likes and dislikes, if they have any allergies and things like this. Whereas as a flight attendant, I'm sure if you remember, if someone has an allergy, that's already done for you. You don't need to go around double checking who's allergic to what. Exactly. They have a set meal and that's it. So
you just need to make sure not to give them the wrong meal, because then you are toast.
For sure.
But at one moment you mentioned that hospitality suits your personality.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So I like to think that I'm a nice person, that I'm very bubbly and charismatic. Mm-hmm. And the fact that I can show my personality at work. Like, I don't need to become like a robot. I'm allowed to show my personality and talk to people how I would talk to my friends, my family. So it's something, I don't know, it's something that really suits me because I love to talk and I'll talk to anyone about anything. And I'm very much a people pleaser. Like, generally very much a people pleaser. So my job is making sure that everyone is happy. So it's something that kind of coincides with my personality in that aspect.
Yeah. And that's such an important topic, personality in hospitality. We had several guests that we were talking about recruiting, and almost a common and recurring theme is we don't hire for skills, we hire for personality.
100%.
We always say that in hospitality. So how important is personality when you actually decide to work in hospitality?
I mean, I think it's probably one of the most important things because everything else you can teach. Personality you cannot change. Attitude you cannot change. So hiring the right people for this industry, I think, is probably your top priority. Because if you don't have those people that care about people, that don't have, a personality that they like to show off, or they're witty, it's not going to match when you're serving customers. Customers like to engage with the staff, You're there to make their experience. They're not there just to have good food, good drinks. They can have that at home, So they come for that experience that you provide to them. So I think it's something really important. Everything else you can teach them.
I completely agree. I think it's so important. And when you say like everything else can be taught, it's very important to understand that when, as a leader, we try to teach skills, in our case with the academy, but of course on the ground as a manager, you try to teach them, you actually give them the tools to then express their personalities, because when they know more about the food, more about the cocktails, and they don't have to think about, let me go and ask the chef what is in this dish, or let me ask the bartender what is in this drink. Then if they are way more confident and knowledgeable, then their personality comes up.
Yeah, I think that's something that I was, maybe when I first started working in hospitality, maybe I was a little bit shy to begin with because I didn't have this vast knowledge in my background of learning about all these things. And of course, as soon as I started studying and learning everything, like your personality just comes through and everyone sees like a completely different side of you. I completely agree with what you said. It's very true.
And guys, because you both have a lot more experience in hospitality than I do, when you say flight attendant, is hospitality something that comes to people's minds or not? Like that kind of job?
I think, like from my experience, when we talk about the travel and tourism sector, hospitality is part of the travel and tourism sector. And now more than ever, I think we are in an era where flight attendants become a full hospitality job, because I think, as you say, Emirates pride themselves in having a great service, as well as Qatar Airways, Etihad, but many companies worldwide, Singapore Airlines, they really pledged to create an experience for the guests. That wasn't the case for a few years, right? At the beginning, at the golden era of aviation, it was all about the service. Then it became more about the low-cost airlines and bring people in. And then starting again, we have this experience. So I think, yes, it's an hospitality. It's just a different style of hospitality. And I wanted to understand more, like, as you said, like the food and beverage service is simpler on the plane, but I think the expectation of the guests are way different because they are tired. They are always on flight. They are traveling across the world. There is jet lag involved. There is so many other aspects that we don't see in 1 hour dinner of a guest coming to your restaurant. So I think there are difficulties also in the flight attendant job. So did you encounter any of these difficulties?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think what people tend to forget, people are not always traveling for a holiday. People are traveling for all sorts of different things, sometimes good, sometimes bad things. So I think this is something really important that you as a flight attendant need to realize, that you may have a really difficult passenger, but you don't know what they're going through. You don't know the reason for them traveling. So 100% what you're saying is right, is that there is completely different difficulties as a flight attendant. And when you compare it to a guest that you have in a restaurant, I mean, they're coming out for dinner. You know they're there to have a good time. You know that there's nothing behind that. So it's something that, as a flight attendant, you need to be very empathetic towards your passengers. And I think it's just most important. You just need to be nice. Just be nice, smile, like make sure everyone is happy, the best that you can do. And it's going to change their day around as well. Like if they're traveling for like a not so good reason, and you make their day, that's going to make a million difference to their day completely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but we were talking in a couple of episodes how hard it is actually to carry your smile all the time
100%,
with yourself.
yeah.
So how were you handling that as a flight attendant?
I mean, as a former flight attendant, I'm sure everyone I've spoken to has experienced this. I'm sure you've experienced it too. It can be very lonely. Like it can be a very lonely job. You're constantly working with different people all the time. When you get back into Dubai, maybe your friends are not around and you're alone again. And it's very difficult in that aspect. But I think mentally you have to be kind of strong. Like you kind of have to forget your problems and your difficulties that you're going through. And I have like kind of it's not a funny story. It's kind of funny now because everything's fine, but it wasn't funny back then. So I was going for a flight one day and I get a message from my dad saying that my mum has been run over. Like she's been in a really bad accident. They had to get the air ambulance to come and get her. So I'm like, and he just told me that, she's been run over. Like didn't tell me she's fine or nothing. So in my head, of course, I'm thinking the worst. And I had just checked in for my flight and I didn't know what to do, whether I should turn back around and go and try and get a flight back to the UK. But it was a night flight and I knew that the next flight to London wasn't until around 7 a.m. So I knew I would be landing back in time to catch the next flight to the UK. So I was like, okay, just go to work, do your flight. And when you land, you're going to have more information and you're going to figure out what you need to do, whether you're going to stay, carry on working, or if you need to go back to the UK. So I remember going onto this flight and I didn't tell anyone to begin with. And of course, like it was really getting to me. I didn't know if my mum was alive or dead, So I went and spoke to the flight purser, which is like the flight manager, and I told her what had just happened. Like I received this message from my dad, I didn't know what's going on. And she was like, what are you doing here? Like you shouldn't be here. And I'm like, it's okay, I'd rather be here to like distract myself. Like my passengers are going to be fine, everything's going to be fine, I'm going to do my job as best as I can. And then thankfully when I landed from that flight, I called my dad and figured out like my mum was fine. Thankfully she was in hospital recovering. And everything was good. So that was probably one of the most difficult experiences that I mentally and emotionally had to go through going to a flight, which still, like going back to, you need to be mentally strong to be able to put your differences aside to make sure that your passengers are getting the best, in my experience, best Emirates experience, best Emirates service, So yeah, you do have, especially like, other days where you're not feeling great and you need to put on a smile, and it's not easy by any means, but I feel when you're doing your job and you're doing your job well and the passengers appreciate what you're doing, it makes you feel a little bit better. Like when you do something good for somebody and they appreciate it, it makes you feel good, know? So it kind of gives you that motivation to keep on going. And of course you do get difficult passengers, but every time you get a difficult passenger, you have like 10 lovely passengers.
That's true.
So you kind of need to make the best of your situation. I know some people have a difficult passenger and that ruins their entire day and puts them in a bad mood for the rest of the flight or whatever. But you need to see the positives. I think you just need to see the positives and remain optimistic, and not let the small things kind of affect you. Yeah. Life's too short,
Yeah.
I love it because we discussed, of course, like we discussed that smile from a point of view of, sometimes you don't feel like putting on a smile, but many times companies or managers ask you to put on a smile as almost as a part of a uniform.
Yes,
and sometimes you don't feel like it. But we never highlight the fact that actually, and I think it's a very important point, that hospitality is all about making somebody else experience good. And we feed from that energy, we feed from that happiness of the guest, what we created. And I witnessed firsthand this, that when a guest is actually happy and he shares his happiness, then I feel better about myself too, right? So we didn't highlight this before, and I'm really grateful that you did. It was great.
Yeah, that's an amazing message. I mean, I've been in a few TV interviews like talking about this flight attendant job. It's always interesting to the public. Did you notice that like this job has some special aura about it? They feel like it's almost like Hollywood level, which is not, but this is how it looks to them, right?
It's true.
But I was always highlighting that, in my opinion, one of the most important things is mental toughness and the ability to endure a lot of loneliness.
Yeah.
So that's definitely true, but still I cannot imagine what you were going through in that particular situation that you mentioned. But I guess after that, everything else was easy, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
There was no other situation that could...
No, that was definitely like the most difficult experience I had on a flight, personally, for myself. Like, everything else, like, you know, you deal with these people and stuff, it's fine. Nothing's going to be worse than that experience. And of course, there's obviously other people who experience like way worse things than that. But thankfully, touch wood, like that was the worst.
But how much
me.
did this job change you? Like I always also say, like, you know, there was like many experiences in life, but I always say that this job of flight attendant was one of these things in life that really changed me.
Yeah.
How much did it change you?
I mean, for sure, it changed me a lot. I mean, I think coming from the UK to a country in the Middle East where you're surrounded by every nationality in the world, which I thought was like a really incredible thing. Like you get to learn so much about different cultures and different nationalities. And I think that aspect really changed me a lot. Like, especially when I go back home now and people, I don't know, you know, you have ignorant people everywhere you go and you see the way that they talk and the way they don't experience travel the way that we have. And, you know, I don't want to say you feel like you're better than everyone else by any means, but you have this more like experience of traveling to different countries, speaking to other people, learning different things. And that's something that really, really changed me for the better. Like,
so you are both having experience with flight attendant, and both of you mentioned loneliness. And it really resonated with me the fact that when I was in hospitality and now in Xenios Academy, the most beautiful part of my job is actually the team. And it's something that in hospitality you witness every day because you spend 15 hours, 12 hours, or whatever is your shift a day with the same exact people all the time. In our company, we are all over the world, but we are so united and we know each other that it becomes almost like a second family. As we say, in hospitality is very common. Now, in flight attendant, you don't have that. How do you feel the difference now that you are in hospitality and you have, you know, the team that you go back every day?
Honestly, when I first lost my job with Emirates, of course, like it was a very difficult time. But now I look back and I think it was probably a blessing in disguise because now I've joined this team who I work with and I see every single day and I literally love them all. Like you said, they're family. They're literally your second family. And I love going into work because I just know I'm with my friends. Like every single day you see your friends where you don't have that as being a flight attendant. You constantly see different people every day. And like sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing, you know? But when you have like a team that you see every single day that's literally your second family, that for me has already been the benefit of changing my career to the hospitality industry on ground. Like really changed my life.
Amazing.
Yeah, that for sure makes a difference. One thing that people don't know is that when you're a flight attendant, you work with a different team every single day. Like the people that you have worked with yesterday, like you may never see them before because there is a lot of flights and a lot of cabin crew.
Exactly. It's
and I didn't know that until now, that you never work with the same.
Yeah, it rarely happens that you get the same cabin crew member on your flight. I was lucky that twice I've had flights with two of my good friends, but that's like very, very rare.
Yeah,
right?
super rare. I think it happened to me also twice, but from swapping onto flights to work with your friends, but it's really, really difficult. Yeah, you never really work with your friends as a flight attendant.
Yeah.
And
well, yeah, that's new to me. That's why I was so interested to see, because I always experience having a team or going to work with the team. So it kind of like, dawned on me, like, that's very different. That's very different. And in terms of, I think, service, let's go back to service and let's go back to guests. In hospitality now, how you say, you know, you need to know the guest, you get to know the guest a little bit better, you get to know the preferences and everything, and how much training is important in hospitality in a restaurant compared to, flights, for example.
I mean,
because I know that you had a great training from Qatar, so I'm sure that you had a great training in Emirates. But sometimes training in hospitality and restaurants is a bit different and more difficult to organize, and that's where we come in, right? Actually, giving the tools to hospitality to train the people. But how important do you feel is now training more than ever?
I mean, it's really important to have training, and we really pride ourselves in our restaurant that we do ongoing training, even though we have members who have been working in the company for 3, 4, 5 years. The training never stops. Like we're constantly learning or relearning something, because it's impossible to remember absolutely everything. You need to remember every single liqueur or spirit that we serve and every single details about that. It's really, really difficult to remember absolutely everything. So we constantly do trainings on a weekly basis. We'll choose a product or a dish or something, and we will continuously do training on that for a few days, and then we'll move on to another topic. So it's something, it's really good in terms of being able to, I mean, it's a business at the end of the day, so being able to upsell your products to find out what the guests like. And in terms of things like wines, you find out the grape and things that they like. You can find a bottle of wine that they've never actually tried before, but you know they're going to love it because they've told you their preferences and what they look for in a wine. Yes. So it's something, of course, it's something important, and it's always ongoing. I've been there for 3 years myself, and even myself, I'm still learning things every single day.
Yeah, it's always like a never-ending journey of learning in hospitality. And plus, there are so many products coming to market, and as you say, you cannot remember everything. Yeah. You always need to retrain and retest, and this is some of the principle that we use. But also, I love the fact that you say, as a business, we need to upsell and learn how to upsell so that the guest doesn't feel that it's an upsell, but is actually you are creating an experience for the guest. So he sees it as an additional value. Is actually happy to give you his money or their money. So and you told me about your training in Qatar. It was the onboarding, right? When you started in your career in flight attendant, you have like a huge period of onboarding, a very long period of onboarding that you don't actually fly. You just train.
I think it's
which is something in hospitality doesn't
over
happen.
2 months in Qatar.
Wow.
It's a very, very extensive training.
In hospitality, you get hired, you get thrown in the pit, as they say. That's like go in the restaurant, serve, go in the bar and make drinks. That's your onboarding. Yes, that's your onboarding.
But I feel like maybe this is because mostly people who start like flying, they're very young, right? 19, 20, 21. So they usually don't have any previous experience with work, right? So maybe this is especially important for a flight attendant, just to get to know like what does it mean to be responsible.
Yes. Yeah. But that's happened as well in hospitality. I mean, especially in Dubai, I think most of the talents in hospitality in Dubai are quite young when they arrive here. So I think it's just like the view of airlines is to actually prepare people properly before they actually face the guests. But in hospitality, we do not have the luxury to do it because you need people all the time. The turnover is greater, and you throw basically the new employee in the pit and let them serve, right? For example, I remember doing a fire training or a health and safety training in a hotel. After 1 month, I joined the place. Yeah. And in the airline, I think you cannot even set foot on the plane before you know safety measures, right?
Exactly.
Fire training is definitely part of the training in the first few weeks. And oh my God, I hated it. I hated fire training.
Yes?
Yeah, I wasn't a fan either. I'm really scared of fire, though. It freaks me out.
You just hope it's never going to happen, and that's it. Carrie, one more thing that I noticed in your biography, you have traveled a lot, and you've been working a lot, and you're still so young. You've been in England, Wales, US, Middle East. Was it all related to hospitality?
I mean, when I look back, I think most of it actually was. So I was very fortunate when I was at university. I used to have very long summers off. So I was very fortunate, and I used this time to travel. Instead of like actually getting proper jobs and working on my future career, I decided I just wanted to travel. So I found jobs that enabled me to travel. So on my first year of university, the first summer that I was off, I went to Greece as a little 19-year-old girl, not knowing what I was going to do. Luckily, I had some friends who were working there for the previous season. So I went to Greece. I got a job working as like PR for like bars and restaurants, as you know, those annoying people outside that try and drag you into their place. But it was so much fun. And that was probably like my first proper experience in like, let's say, hospitality sector, but it wasn't anything
spectacular.
Yeah, it was just, I was there to have fun, get some money and to enjoy my life.
Well, that's how we all started, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And then when I went back to university, I managed to get a part-time job working in a bar. So I was also a bartender back in the day, not any fancy bar or anything, but it was a little cocktail bar in our university town, which was also a great experience. And I had a really great manager at the time. And there's still things that he said to me back then that resonates with me now, which I have carried on to be in my position as a manager of the restaurant now. So that was a really great experience, which obviously I didn't realize at the time. I was just there for a part-time job to, survive university life. But now I look back at it and it was really a good experience to have that to where I am now in my career. And then for the second and third years of my summers at university, I decided to join what we call Camp America. It's like an organization where you go and work as a camp counselor in a camp in America. So that was completely different. I was working with children, which I never thought I would want to do, but I absolutely loved it. I had the time of my life. And then after that, you had like a month or so left on your visa where you could go traveling around the US. So it was really, really a fun experience. And honestly, one of my best past fond memories that I have is from when I was working in the summer camp in America. And then after that, finished university, trying to figure out what to do. And then fortunately enough, I managed to get a job with Emirates and I came to Dubai, and like the rest is history. So
how would you
managed
compare like these experiences in hospitality around the world? Like what are the main differences?
I mean, I think when we talk about hospitality in Dubai, from the guest perspective, they're very spoiled here. Like we pride ourselves on hospitality service in Dubai so much. Like we have such a high standard. And just recently with all of our regular guests coming back after their summer travels in Europe, they're all saying they want to come back to Dubai. They're just excited to have good service again. Like you go to restaurants and everything around Europe and the US where you don't get this intense service that, our customers are used to in Dubai. So I think it's very different in the sense that we're very more personalized. We spoil our guests here, we give them the best of the best service that you're not going to find maybe anywhere else in the world.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I didn't ask you for your age. I'm not going to do that. But you're fairly young, definitely.
I mean, I don't feel it, but thanks.
And you've been in Dubai for 7 years, you told me. So
yeah.
I assume when you arrived here, you were extremely young. So how was that, like adapting as a female in the Middle East?
Do you know, this is maybe a little bit ignorant, but coming from the UK, moving to a Middle East country, a Muslim country, whereas, I was raised as a Christian and everyone was a bit apprehensive as to how I would be treated as a woman in the Middle East. They all thought that, women didn't have any rights over here and all this, which I knew not to be true. But of course, people are telling me these things. I'm still a bit apprehensive. And then when I came to Dubai and realized it's the complete opposite. Women are treated like royalty here. And it's one of the safest cities in the world.
That's true.
I was really, really excited. And I still remember like my dad dropping me off at the airport and I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to go. He's just like, go, if you don't like it, you can always come back. And yeah, I've never been back. I mean, of course I go back to visit, but I've never ever thought of moving back to the UK. I think being a woman in Dubai, we're so lucky that we're so safe. And not just as a woman, as a man as well. Like it's a very safe city.
It is one of the safest in the world.
Yeah.
It is.
So that's like one of the aspects that I really love about being here. And when I came as a younger version of myself, of course I was more excited than nervous. Leaving the UK is something I always dreamt of. So finding like a secure job like Emirates at the time, I felt really spoiled and very lucky that I was able to do that and just leave home and, live by myself and figure everything out. Because I always had like flatmates and stuff when I was living at university and all this. So it was really nice to come and experience, you have to do everything by yourself, take care of yourself. Like that was really fun.
I want to actually go back to something you said, because it's something that, I encounter many, many times in my life. You said something about the first manager you had when you were bartending. You said something that still resonates with you. Yeah. And it's something so common in hospitality. We always had that manager that somehow inspired you, or it said something that you actually then carry on for the rest of your career almost as a credo. How important is the role of a leader or a manager in hospitality, in a restaurant, and how can he shape careers in this business?
Yeah, I think it's something incredibly important. And, when I first started at my restaurant, I told you guys I started as a head waitress and I worked my way up, and I had a really, really amazing manager at the time then. And I think there's a change that we've noticed, maybe, I don't know, in the past like 10 years or so, where managers are, as you said, they're leaders. They're not there to micromanage the team, You're there to inspire your team. You're there to encourage them and be in a position where they wish to be one day. And I think the most important thing the most important thing that I've learned and that I like to practice myself is that you need to be kind to your team. You need to be empathetic with them. There's no place for this archaic mentality anymore where you scream at people and, you know, always point out what they did wrong. It doesn't work like that. And it's even been proven like scientifically, like given pointing out everyone's wrongdoings is not positive reinforcement. So I think that's something that's possibly changed a lot recently, where, you know, the managers and the people who are in those positions need to change their way of thinking if they've been in the industry for a long time, or you have new people coming in who have this new mentality where, you know, positive reinforcement is much more important than the negative side of things.
That's great to hear. I think it's we all know we love hospitality. We are in this business for a reason, but there is also so much toxicity in hospitality, and we cannot hide behind it. We need to face forward. And there are a lot of examples of toxicity in hospitality that comes from frontline, back of house, chefs. You know, it happens all the time. So I'm really glad to hear that you also experience that things are changing. And I think it's extremely important also because Dubai, I think is really leading into like caring about the people working in this industry. So it's great to see that as well. And do you ever face any of this toxicity in the airlines business?
Oh, yeah.
100%.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
I want to hear more. I want to hear more.
I mean, of course, as I mentioned already, you work with a different set of people every single day. And of course, it's you cannot expect that you're going to like everyone on board, like all your colleagues. I mean, you don't even have to like them, but you have to respect them and you have to work with them. But you always notice these little things, you know, in the energy between the people, and you cannot avoid it. Like imagine you have, my longest flight was from Doha, Qatar to Sao Paulo, Brazil, over 17 hours. So imagine all the energies and, you know, small details you're going to notice during the flight. And some of them can be quite toxic. For example, I always wanted to take time when I speak to the customers. I wanted to have my own zone, like to take my own time, like go slowly. I didn't like to be rushed, which sometimes happens with the service. You probably know that. So there's a lot of situations that can trigger toxicity. But I guess the only way you can handle that is just like being yourself and doing your job as best as you can and enjoy the flight. At the end of the day, you really have to enjoy the flight if you want this job, right? Would you
Absolutely.
agree?
And it's just like what you said. You don't have to respect the person who's above you, but you need to respect their position, and that's something really important that you need to remember. You might not get along with your seniors on your flight, but it doesn't matter. You still need to respect the position that they're in.
That's very true. Carrie, you at one point mentioned new people coming to hospitality. So now this is Gen Z, right?
Yeah. Is that where we're at now?
That's where we are at now. I know it may sound impressing, but like, yeah. So what would be your advice for, let's say, very young people? It doesn't have to be Gen Z, but maybe somebody who doesn't have an experience with the Middle East and hospitality industry, but they still want to come after this episode. Maybe they were thinking whether should they try, should they not try. So
we're convincing them to do it.
Yeah. Now after your experience, they decided to do it. So what would be your advice for them?
My biggest piece of advice would be you need to get ready for some hard work, long hours, but the benefits that you get from doing that, I mean, I feel like people don't realize in hospitality, it's a good place to make some money, and it's a good place to meet other people. And, you know, you never know who you're going to meet, where that's going to take you. But you need to be ready to run a lot, work a lot of hours. But if you're a hardworking person and you're willing to put in the time and the effort, then you're going to be successful.
Amazing. Yeah.
Sounds great.
Carrie, this was a great conversation.
Thank you.
I really hope to have you again.
For sure.
And I feel we can do a separate episode just for like Qatar Airways Emirates.
Yeah, right.
The battle of the giants.
That would be a long
because that's
episode.
the battle that never ends, like, between the crew of Emirates and Qatar Airways. Like what's good on one side and what's not.
Yeah.
So, but I really enjoyed this.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
before we close, there is something that we ask our guests to share, is one particular experience with the guest that really encapsulate the beauty of hospitality. When you were saying, you know, when you make your guests feel happier, you feel happier yourself. Can you share with us a particular example to actually inspire people?
I mean, I think I don't have like one particular, but I have a lot of particulars. The guests who come to our restaurant and who you provide the best service that you possibly can to, they come back for you. And these people are now people that I call friends. Like, who were once customers, they're still customers, they still come back, but they're my friends now. And I think that's something that I really, really admire, is that you never know who you're going to meet. And if you put yourself in, like, if you just be you, if you just be yourself, and you can meet all these incredible people, which is something that I've really appreciated.
I don't think that there are many industries in the world where your customer can become your friends, right? Like, I don't think there is such a connection with regulars as in hospitality. So it's great that you like that. I really like it.
Yeah, that's also happening in the cabin crew life. Yeah, because imagine you spend a lot of hours with some people. You have to talk about something with them, and then suddenly you discover you have a lot of similarities. And I have quite a few people that I'm still in touch with through Instagram, WhatsApp, and they were my customers. Yeah,
amazing.
Carrie, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for having me,
pleasure.
guys. It was lovely.
Thank you very much for everything. Thank you, Carrie, and for sharing your experience in hospitality. And I'm sure we inspire a new generation of people coming to Dubai and giving the best service possible.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, we hopefully encouraged future hospitality professionals and flight attendants.
Sounds great.
And guys, as you know, we'll see you very soon in the new episode of Hospitality as It Is. Thank you for your attention.